After the Hand and the Queen Regent's plan to separate King Jaehaerys and Queen Alsyanna, it was inevitable word that the king's marriage to his sister would begin to spread. Too many had witnessed the confrontation at the gates of Dragonstone, and the lords who had called there afterwards had not failed to notice Alsyanna's presence at the king's side and the obvious affection between them. Even across the narrow sea, news had started to surface. The Queen Regent told her councillors that it was done and could not be undone, that they needed to live with it, and that they must use all their power to protect them from what may come. Queen Alyssa had lost 2 sons to Maegor the Cruel, and a coldness lay between her and the eldest daughter, Queen Rhaena. She could not bear the thought of being forever estranged from the 2 children who remained close to her. But Rogar Baratheon, the Hand of the King and Lord Protector, would not yield as gracefully, and his wife's words woke a fury. In front of Grand Maester Vermithor, Septon Matthias, Lord Velaryon and the rest of the council, he spoke to her contemptuously. He told her that she was weak, just as her first husband was, that they were all fools to crown Jaehaerys, as the boy only thinks of himself, and he'd be a worse king than his father was. He thanked the gods that it was not too late and they still had time to cast him aside. A hush then fell over the chamber as the Queen Regent looked on in horror and began to weep in silence. Only then did the other lords in the room speak up, with Lord Velaryon asking the Hand if he had taken leave of his senses. The commander of the City Watch shook his head and said how his men will never stand for it. Prentice Tully, the Master of Law, asked the Hand if he meant to claim the Iron Throne for himself. Lord Rogar strongly denied the claim, saying he would never usurp the throne, that he only wanted the best for the 7 kingdoms. His plan was to send Jaehaerys to Oldtown to forge a maester's chain and place Princess Aeria on the throne. He argued there was fire in her that Jaehaerys lacked. He could continue as a Hand, shape her, guide her, teach her all she must know. She had a stronger claim as a mother and father with King Aegon's first and second born children. Jaehaerys was 4th. Most of all, Rogar pointed out her mother, Queen Rhaena, would surely support her claim. After all, she also had a dragon. It was Queen Alyssa who broke the long silence that followed through her tears. She pointed out that she was Queen Regent, and she remained so until her son came of age. They all served at her pleasure, including the Hand of the King. She looked at her lord husband with eyes dark as dragonglass, and told the Hand that his services no longer pleased her, to return to Storm's End so they may never talk of his treason again. Rogar Baratheon looked at her incredulously and defiant. It was only when Lord Corbury rose to his feet and drew his sword that Rogar realised he had gone too far, that he stood alone against every man in the room. He said no further word. He stood and removed the golden brooch that Queen Alyssa had given him as a token of his office, and flung it at her with contempt as he strode from the room. He took his leave of King's Landing that very night, crossed the Blackwater Rush with his brother Oren. There he stayed for 6 days, whilst his other brother, Ronald, assembled their knights and men-at-arms for the march home. On the night of Rogar's dismissal, Sir Ronald Baratheon and a dozen men forced their way into the chambers of Princess Aeria Targaryen in the Red Keep, intending to take her with them, only to find that Queen Alyssa had stolen the march on them. The girl was already gone. It was later learned that Lord Corbury had removed her, dressed her in rags of a common girl with silver gold hair, dyed a muddy brown. Princess Aeria would spend the rest of the Regency working in the stables near the King's Gate. She was 8 years old and loved horses. Many years later, she would say that this was the happiest time of her life, but there was little happiness for Queen Alyssa. Her dismissal of her husband as Hand of the King had destroyed any affection Lord Rogar had felt for her, and from then on their marriage was an empty shell. Queen Alyssa Velaryon had survived the death of her husband and her 2 eldest sons, a daughter who died in the cradle, years of terror under Maegor, and a rift with her remaining children, Rhaena, Jaehaerys and Alsyanna, but this shattered her beyond repair. She named her brother Daemon Velaryon as Hand of the King, and dispatched a raven to Dragonstone to tell Jaehaerys some of what had happened, but withheld much of Rogar's words, and then retired to her chamber in Maegor's holdfast for the remainder of her regency. She left the rule of the 7 kingdoms to Daemon, and took no further part in public life. For Rogar, the taste of defeat stuck at the back of his throat. The matter of the king's marriage had become a war to him, one he was determined to win. One last foolish folly remained to him, and he did not shirk from it. At a mother house attached to the Starry Sept in Oldtown, Sir Oren Baratheon appeared suddenly with a dozen men-at-arms and a letter bearing Rogar's seal, demanding that the novice Rhaena Targaryen be turned over to them immediately. When questioned, Oren only said that Lord Rogar had urgent need of the girl at Storm's End. The ploy may well have worked, but the Septons manning the gate had a very suspicious nature. Whilst placating Sir Oren with the pretext of sending for the girl, they in fact sent for the High Septon. In place of a frightened girl, the Baratheon men found themselves confronted by 30 armed Septons under the command of the steward Caspar Straub. When Sir Oren brandished a sword, Straub calmly informed him 200 of Lord Hightower's knights were on their way, whereupon the Baratheons quickly surrendered. Sir Oren confessed that he was to deliver the girl to Storm's End, where Lord Rogar planned to force her to confess that she was actually Princess Aeria, not Rhaena. then name her queen. At Storm's End, Rogar fumed and raged when he learned of his brother's failure, but he did not call his banners, as many had feared he would. Instead, he fell into a deep despair. He told his maester that he had two choices left: the wall, or the boy king would have his head. Having no children by either of his wives, he commanded his maester to draft a will and confession, wherein his brother Boris, Garin, and Ronald of having played any role in his wrongdoing, begging for mercy for his younger brother Oren, and named Sir Boris heir to Storm's End. On the 12th day of the 9th moon of 50 AC, Jaehaerys Targaryen reached his 16th name day and became a man grown. By all laws of the Seven Kingdoms, he was now old enough to rule in his own right, with no further need of a regent. All across the Seven Kingdoms, lords and small folk alike waited to see what kind of king he would become.